Me again, Margaret. I'm here after I came back from lunch today. Well, first let me tell you, I cleaned this thing with Dixie Belle White Lightning and it was filthy. Got it for 10 bucks at a garage sale. I put on a layer of Dark and Decrepit from DIY as a stain on the wood underneath, so it would be a little bit darker than the traditional like golden oak tone that was under there. And then I put on 2 coats of Dixie Belle Daisy, which is a bright yellow. And now I've put on today 2 coats of Mermaid Tail, which is a teal color. And I have this sander that I got for like 20 bucks at Walmart. It's like a sheet sander. I've already sanded a little bit with this paper. I'm not going to go get another one, and we're not going to try to get this perfect today. But if any of you are wanting to start on a project like this, I wanted you, since I'm going to be off for a couple of days, to at least see this part of it. There's several kinds of these sanders. There's the little iron-shaped one. I think it's called a mouse, and that's okay. This one fits my hand okay, and this one was cheaper and had more different grits of paper on here. I think this is about an 80, which is pretty rough. It may be close to 100. If we were trying to just pull off a little bit, we would use a higher number grit. We're trying to get down to the yellow in some places and get down to the brown in other places. And if we used a random orbital sander, which is a bigger one that has a round disc on it that goes really fast, it would cut down through this a whole lot deeper, a whole lot faster. But I'm wanting to semi-control this because I am heavy-handed already. So this little 20-something dollar one here is what we're going to use, if I even remember where the on button's at. Trying to think of the areas where people would be scooting on and off of the chair. Right here is where their legs would have been more, and more would have been rubbed off. In some areas to get all the way down to the wood, and in others just the yellow. And the raised areas of the seat, if I can put it any closer, the raised areas of the seat would have got more use than the inner layer, so they will reveal more. This particular chair has pegs that went through it. There would be some wear on those. Get the areas where the feet would go on bottom and a little bit of use here on the leg. I'm trying to be easy because if I push too hard, more wood will show, but I want the yellow to really be the highlight of the show here. About where people would have picked up the chair and grabbed it. trying to get a little more yellow without going all the way down to the brown. Now, how cool is that? Thank you, Kimberly. I love the yellow underneath, too. To me, now that looks like a pretty old chair, which is what I wanted. Like something my grandmother would have painted, because she was kind of funky-dillick in her way of doing stuff. What I'm going to do now is probably think on it a couple of days, but the plan will be to put... you know what, let's do something else real quick before we do that, since we're here. Wanting to put, I'm going to use this champagne, because I bought it because I've been aching to see what it was going to look like. And so now it looks distressed, and it looks previously loved, but I also want it to look happy. So... I don't know whether this was the right color to use or whether I really needed a bright gold, and I think I might have really needed a bright gold. Let's see. Maybe not. Can always do that later if so. So I'm sort of just going to put a little here and there, kind of frame it in a little. With this champagne gold, just to give it a little extra love here and there. This is not going to go all over it. Just putting some on the... I'm down to 20% battery. You think it needs a little bit more, Kimberly? Let me see if I can turn... Like the back here that you can... The back here that you can see, or the back like the back of the chair. If you were... Can you see it up close there or not? There's a decent amount up here around the edges, and then just down to the yellow here. I could do a little more here, or if you mean, okay, I could do that definitely. I will, let me kind of hit the edges with this a little bit. We definitely can put a little more up there, because this would have been a lot more worn, but what I think that I'll need to do with that is use my, sanding block or a piece of hand sandpaper, because that was hitting it so hard, and with that being square and this being rounded, I was having a little bit of trouble getting that to go where I wanted it to. So that'll be something whenever we come to this next, either in a couple of days or next week, depending on when I get back to work here. I'll sand a little bit more up there, and what I'm gonna also do is decide whether to wax it, which would be cool, because then you could use darker and lighter waxes to age it a little bit more through the edges that way, or just to go ahead and go with a top coat on it and you know, and seal it and be done with it. Just a hint of this glimmer. I wonder if I can put that through here without I'm afraid I'm gonna mess something up, so I'm not gonna do it. I'm just gonna hit here and there with it, just because I wondered what this would do today, and if I don't like this whenever I come back to work, I can always sand it back off. But I'm just wanting a hint of a glimmer here and there. But yeah, I think you're right. It probably needs to go a little bit more through there, and that'll need to be done with a hand sander. So thank y'all for, thank you. I'm glad you like them. I wanted it to be happy. You know what I mean? I wanted it to look old and loved, but I still wanted it to be happy. So hopefully that was accomplished, and will continue to be accomplished as we add more layers and do more cool stuff to it. So if you can find an old chair. I do like the DIY paints. This is Dixie Belle that I used on here today. I use and sell both brands. The DIY paints are totally different than any paint that I've worked with before. There's a little bit of a learning curve there, but you can do things with water and blending with that paint that you just can't do with any other paint, because it doesn't require a top coat, and each time that you put water on it, either with your brush or a misting bottle or whatever, it reactivates the layer underneath, where if you're not careful, it's going to pull up all the work that you did already. But once you get used to doing it, you can learn just the right amount of misting and water to put on there, so that you can go over it with another color and do layers and use that water to reveal a little bit of your undercolor with what's called wet distressing, which you really can't do so much with this. It's not near as easy. It can be done, but you can come back. If I would have painted this in DIY paint, I could have came back next week and sprayed water on it and wiped it all off, or wet distressed it, or layered the colors on there. I love the Dixie Belle. I love the DIY too, don't get me wrong. I love them both, and I love them in different ways. And I found myself lately using the Dixie Belle more because it doesn't require a top coat. So whenever I put this yellow on here, whenever I came back to put this teal on over it, I didn't have to worry about it muddying up the yellow. I didn't have to worry about not being able to see the yellow later, and I could wipe this off and leave it like it is right now and be done and not require a top coat. I will put one to protect it, but this has a little bit of an acrylic base in it that hardens, and the DIY paint does not. It doesn't have any type of sealer, so if you forget to seal it and pour some water on it later, it's coming up. If your husband's like mine and walks by with his hands like this full of water, he has just ruined everything you just spent hours on. With the paint that doesn't like with the DIY paint. With the Dixie Belle, it would just dry and I wouldn't worry about it. But thank you, Kimberly. And well, DIY can be used without wet distressing, but it's the best for wet distressing. So if you're wanting to do wet distressing, which on some of my older videos I've done wet distressing, and I think we did the ombre with the DIY paint. It's really, really good for wet distressing. I could take one of these baby wipes right now if this was DIY paint, and if I was to do this, wipe it on here like this, I would wipe up all of the DIY paint right there, and that would be how I would get back down to the yellow. With Dixie Belle, it's just taking off the loose dust that I just sanded off of there. But with the DIY, this would be taking off the paint. Which would have been cool. That's how you would have went back to the yellow from the teal. If I had done this with DIY paints, I wouldn't have used the sander at all. I would have just used a wet rag or a baby wipe and done like this and wiped that teal off and went down to the yellow. But you have to be so light-handed that you don't go all the way through to the brown, which would have been okay in this instance. I mean, I could have done this technique with either paint, but with the DIY paint, I would have done it without the sander. And it just would have been a totally different look. But this chair could be finished. I could sell this today if I wanted to, because it doesn't require anything else to it. And I love that. And whenever I'm trying, hey Andrew, how do you like the difference in the chair from what you saw earlier? I've now distressed it down to where some of the yellow is showing and some of the brown is showing. But if I had used the DIY, there's no way I could have been through right now. I would have had to, today I used Dixie Belle. I used Dixie Belle Mermaid Tail and Dixie Belle Daisy. But I could have, like I said, I could have done this same technique and came out with something that looked just similar in the end, but it would have been using a wipe to wipe back off the finish, and I couldn't have been done right now. I would have had to have put a top coat on it, or it never would have been sealed and it never would have been ready. So thank you, Andrew. So I could have went, like I said, I could have went this far with it, and then came back, you know, 2 weeks from now with some wet water, reactivated that paint and started over, wiped it off, went down a layer and all the things. So it's just like two totally different products. And the reason I think that I'm leaning more with the projects that I'm doing for y'all on here with the Dixie Belle lately is that all the years that I've been painting furniture and things like that, I was using Sherwin-Williams paint and adding in like plaster of Paris and making my own. And this, with the acrylic in it, is more like a latex paint, and you work with it the same way. So you wait for the yellow to dry before you put on the teal. But with the DIY paint, you're gonna, if you don't, I would have had, in order to work in this same fashion, the method would have been paint it with the yellow DIY paint and then put Big Top or liquid patina or another top coat on it to seal it before I ever could have put the teal on it. And then I would have had to have let the teal dry and sealed it with, you know, Big Top or liquid patina, and then let it dry and then come back to do this distressing. So there's a lot more steps involved with it, but it can do things this can't do. It's just too yes, I do, Kimberly. I will put my, I have a store here in DeRidder, Louisiana, but I'll put my link to the DIY and the Dixie Belle in here, and I would appreciate it if you did that. I actually make like a 10% commission or something like that. Once it gets up over $500 or something like that, then I will, you know, get a commission toward paints for myself and stuff like that if you do order from me. So I do appreciate whenever y'all do that. And when you share, it helps me boost more people to get to see me on Facebook, and hearts bring it up, you know, up to where more people can see it on Facebook. But I'll try to do some more projects. Like I said, till the end of the year, I'm going to be in and out, just, you know, like crazy talk up here, because I've got so many personal things to do and projects to do at home. But I will plan another big DIY project in the near future, so that you can see the wet distressing, or the way of layering the paint and things with the DIY compared to the Dixie Belle. They're both wonderful paints, and I need them both in my life. So I would thank you for following me. I appreciate that. And like I said, if you want to see something with, you know, with one or the other, let me know, and I'll just, you know, whip up a project to do with the other one. But this one I just decided to do with Dixie Belle because it was going to be easier for me to layer. But I appreciate y'all tuning in. I'm fixing to pack up here for the day. If I'm back at all this week, it'll be Thursday, but I'll come in live from home. I have 2 or 3 canvas projects, little paintings and things that I'm going to do and share with y'all. And watch for those if you're interested in canvas painting too. And I appreciate you. Thanks. Bye.